Find out what you're afraid of and go live there. Always do what you are afraid to do. Thinking will not overcome fear, but action will. As soon as the fear approaches near, attack and destroy it. Fears are nothing more than a state of mind. Do what you fear and fear disappears. Have no fear of perfection. You'll never reach it. I'm not afraid of storms, for I'm learning how to sail my ship. Fear is the mother of foresight. Boldness is a mask for fear, however great. Great work is done by people who are not afraid to be great. We are afraid of the enormity of the possible. There is no passion so contagious as that of fear. I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever. A nation that is afraid to let its people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people. Only when we are no longer afraid do we begin to live. Even death is not to be feared by one who has lived wisely. There are things which a man is afraid to tell even to himself, and every decent man has a number of such things stored away in his mind. We simply attempt to be fearful when others are greedy, and to be greedy only when others are fearful. To him who is in fear, everything rustles. There is no hope unmingled with fear, and no fear unmingled with hope. Ultimately, we know deeply that the other side of every fear is freedom. The thinner the ice, the more anxious is everyone to see whether it will bear. We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. Nothing gives a fearful man more courage than another's fear. There are very few monsters who warrant the fear we have of them. We should not be afraid to go into a new era, to leave the old beyond. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. There is no such thing as paranoia. Your worst fears can come true at any moment. I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. No one ever told me that grief felt so like fear. My fear is my substance and probably the best part of me. Tell us your phobias, and we will tell you what you are afraid of. Minds that are ill at ease are agitated by both hope and fear. Fear is excitement without breath. Prosperity is not without many fears and distastes. Adversity not without many comforts and hopes. Fear has many eyes and can see things underground. We fear things in proportion to our ignorance of them. We consume our tomorrows fretting about our yesterdays. The pleasures of love are always in proportion to our fears. The first duty of man is to conquer fear. He must get rid of it. He cannot act till then. I think fearless is having fears, but jumping anyway. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. One of the greatest discoveries a man makes, one of his great surprises, is to find he can do what he was afraid he couldn't do. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. The fearful are caught as often as the bold. Don't be afraid to see what you see. True success is overcoming the fear of being unsuccessful. I may be compelled to face danger, but never fear it. And while our soldiers can stand and fight, I can stand and feed and nurse them. We fear the thing we want the most. There are times when fear is good. It must keep its watchful place at the heart's controls. I'd rather give my life than be afraid to give it. Grief has limits, whereas apprehension has none. For we grieve only for what we know has happened, but we fear all that possibly may happen. You are only afraid if you are not in harmony with yourself. People are afraid because they have never owned up to themselves. I have never known any distress that an hour's reading did not relieve. Fear is static that prevents me from hearing myself. Fear tastes like a rusty knife, and do not let her into your house. True nobility is exempt from fear. Never be afraid to sit a while and think indeed. To pity distress is but human. To relieve it is godlike. One had to take some action against fear when once it laid hold of one. I think what weakens people most is fear of wasting their strength. Courage is a peculiar kind of fear. We lavish on animals the love we are afraid to show to people. They might not return it, or worse, they might. We fear violence less than our own feelings. Personal, private, solitary pain is more terrifying than what anyone else can inflict. I am convinced that it is not the fear of death, of our lives ending, that haunts our sleep so much as the fear that, as far as the world is concerned, we might as well never have lived. The fearful unbelief is unbelief in yourself. I hasten to laugh at everything for fear of being obliged to weep. We should not fret for what is past, nor should we be anxious about the future. Men of discernment deal only with the present moment. If you let your fear of consequence prevent you from following your deepest instinct, your life will be safe, expedient, and thin. That man is prudent who neither hopes nor fears anything from the uncertain events of the future. No good work is ever done while the heart is hot and anxious and fretted. It is the perpetual dread of fear, the fear of fear, that shapes the face of a brave man. Every man, through fear, mugs his aspirations a dozen times a day. A child understands fear and the hurt and hate it brings. I have a fear of being boring. Let the fear of danger be a spur to prevent it. He that fears not gives advantage to the danger. A person's fears are lighter when the danger is at hand. Fear makes us feel our humanity. Having a child, that's always been my biggest fear. I want a child, and I fear a child. He will never have true friends who is afraid of making enemies. I fear the Greeks, even when they bring gifts. The fear of becoming a has-been keeps some people from becoming anything. Everyone wishes that the man whom he fears would perish. You know, sometimes I feel well and vital in the world, and sometimes I just feel so distressed I want to pull my hair out by the roots. To fight fear, act. To increase fear, wait. Put off, postpone. He whom many fear has himself many to fear. I was a very fearful little kid, and I would always see the worst in everything. The glass was half empty. I would see people kissing, and I would think one was trying to bite the other. The mark of fear is not easily removed. An ugly sight, a man who is afraid. Humble souls are fearful of their own strength. This is all you have. This is not a dry run. This is your life. If you want to fritter it away with your fears, then you will fritter it away, but you won't get it back later. Hate is the consequence of fear. We fear something before we hate it. A child who fears noises becomes a man who hates noise. No one should have to live in fear. Show me a guy who's afraid to look bad, and I'll show you a guy you can beat every time. I say I am stronger than fear. We have perhaps a natural fear of ends. We would rather be always on the way than arrive. Given the means, we hang on to them and often forget the ends. When you're fearful, you stumble. Some movie stars wear their sunglasses even in church. They're afraid God might recognize them and ask for autographs. What we have most to fear is failure of the heart. Why is it that when we get older, we get more fearful? I'm different, and my manner invites questions. I'm never afraid to answer. There is nothing that fear and hope does not permit men to do. So then learn to conquer your fear. This is the only art we have to master nowadays, to look at things without fear and to fearlessly do right.